thank you all of you for taking the time out and being part of this session. Like we told you in the mail as well, what the whole idea of doing this as a closed door roundtable session where the whole world is doing webinars is just to have a more secure space for thoughts and ideas to flow more easily. I think instead of having the apprehensions of being on a live call. So that's the whole idea of this. As most of you, I think, know, we organize the Fast Food and Capital Convention, and this is our way of trying to help out the community. So we would be recording the session, and we would be putting it up to the community later on, and in terms of sharing knowledge, what all of you all would be sharing on the call today. So just to quickly introduce, we have Vikrant Batra from Café Delhi Heights. We have
Sagar. I'm not Shirin Batra. That's my daughter's laptop.
Okay. Hey, Vikrant, we met before.
I have met before, yeah.
That's what I said. Vikrant is on someone else's.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. We have Sagar Daryani from Wow Momos. So that's Sagar, and we have Mohit Khatar from Baskin Robbins, and we have Rahul Sharma from Taco Bell, Kabirjit Singh from Burger Singh, and Chris from Cube Health. So I would like to introduce to you our moderator for today, who's Tanu Ganguly. She used to be the editor for NDTV Food and has jumped onto the entrepreneurial bandwagon and has founded the company called Mishri.com. Mishri is India's only food-focused product review destination. They review all types of kitchen ingredients, gadgets, and packaged products. And it's like a verdict-driven shopping tool that is helping thousands of people every day to make buying decisions around the kitchen and dining products. And I think she's doing a great job at that. Mishri is also a venture that's backed by Veer Sanghi. So without taking any more time, Tanu, over to you.
Thank you, Minnie. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone? We've done a little bit of catching up in the last few minutes. How is everyone doing?
Pretty good.
All good. Safe and strong.
Good. All well at my place. Falls on the green zone.
Oh, that's even better. Even better.
I always say all wow.
Never miss an opportunity to plug the brand.
And I should always say all high, huh? All high.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Tanu, if I may say so, I'm not sure about your business model, but if name was anything to go by, it's a wonderful name.
Thank you.
I hope the business model is as good and strong.
Yes. Inshallah, it's picking up. It's because everybody's online, people are shopping. Sure. You also want to know what's the better product. We've actually seen a growth in the last 2 months more than what was happening earlier. So,
sure.
So I'll take that offline. So, the most important thing right now, I think, is that we're talking about reopening. So it makes me believe that perhaps the worst is behind us, and it will, as the conversations proceed further, we will have those days back again where going to restaurants or ordering from there becomes as normal as it used to be. As normal as it used to be. Having said that, the most important thing will, of course, be enhancing the hygiene standards around the restaurant kitchens, the dining areas, the delivery boys, all of that process. And so this conversation it couldn't happen at a more opportune time. It's a good time to also assess what has been happening already and perhaps templatize ways in which other people can, get ideas from this conversation and take home a point or two. So very happy to be here. Like I shared in the note yesterday, it'll be very important to see how the people that are in our kitchens, the dining, the wait staff, the front office team, how their health is managed. And so I'm going to take the first question to Chris. Chris, in today's scenario, workplace health or managing workplace healthcare is supremely important, right? So tell us a bit more about what Cube Health does and how it's so much more relevant today.
Thank you, Tanu. Hi, gentlemen. I might seem like the odd man out, but as my wife says, these are the times where I'm working a lot more than a lot of the other peers out there. Unfortunate as these times may be, from our context, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what Cube Health does. It's been pleasant to see organizations and employers across industries get a lot more serious about the real assets that matter, that are the people. And especially in your industry, that's the bedrock of everything that you guys do, the people. One of the largest employers out there, and an industry that's keeping on growing. Cube Health is a workplace healthcare management company. We work with large employers to help them manage employee health. I don't know if this statistic is known to you all, but in 2018, Indian employers across industries spent about $3 billion in that particular year on various aspects of employee health. In spite of that, all of the employed Indians, and that number is roughly in the region of about 50 million employed Indians, depend solely on their employer to manage their employee health. And here's the statistic that we find. A lot of it is driven simply because it's a statutory compliance, especially in the food services, FFCC compliance or whatever else. If you're running a factory, then there are different kinds. Or it's group health insurance, which almost inadvertently is inadequate when the time comes for that person to claim insurance. We are probably one of the world's least underinsured market. So, the statistics range from anywhere from 60% to 85% of our population does not have insurance, health insurance. And the ones that do, people like you and I, are usually underinsured, which means that out-of-pocket medical expenditure or people selling their gold and jewelry and breaking the fixed deposits to pay for healthcare is actually a very normal thing. And it's the single biggest reason why Indians fall below the poverty line. But given that context, what Cube Health does is it works with companies such as SBI Life Insurance, for whom we manage 16,000 employees across the country. We work with Dalmia Cements, for whom we manage 4 cement plants in the east of the country. We also, in the food services business, which is one vertical that we focus on, work with Jubilant, where we manage 25,000 employees for Domino's, where we do the FSSAI compliance bit, from the vaccinations to whatnot. We've recently started working with Chayos. We've handled a couple of properties for the Taj Group, Westin, Hyatt, and so on and so forth. Our business really, before COVID, or BC, as everyone's been calling it nowadays, revolved around just, hey, we need to do an FSSAI compliance. Here is a 41 type checklist. There are these vaccinations that need to happen. Make sure ke karwa dena, and this is my budget. And, some people will say that, look, it's too complex for me to manage it on an all-India basis. I cannot deal with a Dr. Lal's path lab in one region and deal with a suburban diagnostics in another. So can I just deal with you and you handle everything? And, that's usually our entry point, because we've got over 11,000 hospitals, clinics, and diagnostic centers empaneled onto our network. And you name the brand, they're on it. So first, it started with simplifying it. Second, we give a price guarantee, and almost immediately we are able to reduce about 15% costs on any kind of health checkup. So essentially one price across the country, and if you find anything cheaper, we'll match it. And the third, which is actually turning out to be the reason why companies are staying with us, is all of the health records of employees are on the cloud. So which means in the event there is an FSSAI raid or an audit or whatever else, at a click of a button, all of the records are available. They are digitized. You come to know which are the population which is unhealthy, healthy, what kind of intervention needs to happen, etc. I'll just take a minute more and address the context of the question that Manu talked about. So this was all BC, right? Now what's happened AC is essentially employers have gotten awake to the idea that we always focused on food hygiene, and that's the cornerstone of any good, food services brand. We focused on hygiene of the physical space. but we really didn't pay attention as much as we should to the human who's actually, involved in this process. And whether we like it or not, this pandemic and this particular disease is human transmitted. So therefore, suddenly prioritizing employee health has become the number one important thing, not just as a checkbox, but as a reality. Number two, building reassurance and trust to the employees themselves. Because if I'm a kitchen hand and I've come in and I'm not sure whether my assistant over there has been screened, I'm going to start panicking. And I might not come to work. And not just food services, it happens in an IT company or an ad agency as well. And then, of course, to the public at large, you're starting to do deliveries. A lot of the brands out there are doing these temperature checks. Zomato and these guys are starting to say that, look, we are following WHO guidelines, which is honestly, if you ask me, coming from the health tech space, is a bunch of crock. I mean, it's something that all of us knew all along. And from a consumer standpoint, they start thinking that, of course, Zomato would say it because they are an interested party. What is there a third party out there who's going out there and validating whether the practices being followed for the human are really true? I'll talk more about this further down, but it's been a busy 6 weeks. That's all I can say.
So Chris, as a layman, if I was asking you, how often are these screenings? Because it's one thing to do an annual checkup as a consumer, as someone who wants to know that this restaurant has employees who have been screened by Cube Health. How often is it, and how does that help me, reassure me when I'm placing my delivery next time with you?
Sure. So, the FFCC guidelines thus far had a reasonably vague list and a reasonably vague notification. And I use that word carefully because, like most things with the government, they leave it open enough for interpretation, right? But it essentially said that you have to check for communicable diseases. Now, so we've had clients in the 5-star hotel where the HR person overzealously said, listen, make sure HIV is also covered. Not thinking about the consequence that what if you find a employee that happens to be HIV positive, then WHO has a whole set of guidelines on what you need to do, patient privacy and so on and so forth. On the other hand, you have another guy who would say that, listen, yaar, basic vaccination kara do, because I have 100% attrition. There is no point in me spending all this money on getting this checkup done. So that's the spectrum from the industry side. From the consumer side, the consumer was not aware. I mean, as far as the consumer was concerned, they are not necessarily thinking when they walk into a restaurant, there is an FSSAI label out there. You see that on products, but you don't see that in a restaurant because that was really not the first mention of any kind of branding out there. So, which is essentially what we've tried to do. We've launched a product called the Healthy Workplace Certification, which is similar to the lines of Great Place to Work and so on and so forth, where we want it to be a stamp of approval. It's backed by various kinds of medical certificates that are provided. And we try to address it to the best of the knowledge that's generally available around COVID screening, around FSSAI compliance, around vaccinations, around adherence and healthy habits and so on and so forth, both for food services as well as others. But yeah, that's the layman's perspective.
Yeah, because I suspect going forward, people will not only want to see award certificates, but also health certificates for restaurants, right? And awards and stars that you've gotten there. Yeah,
absolutely right. I mean, if I'm ordering something from some place, or so we were part of a panel discussion earlier, and in your peer group in the industry, they talked about how people socializing within a restaurant space is going a few months away, if not longer. Danny Meyer in the US talks about the whole industry is changing for a very long period of time. But deliveries are starting off, yes. But what's the stamp of approval to a consumer? Yes, we want that social experience, but that guy who's cooking and that person who's serving, have they been screened? Otherwise, and especially in a country like ours where you have over 80% asymptomatic people, these people will follow all kinds of hygiene. They will go home and they will be exposed in public transport and so on and so forth. So they'll come back, they'll wash their hands, but they'll wear a mask. So you've got a guy who's absolutely seemingly fine because he's asymptomatic, but is actually carrying the virus, but is completely clothed in this entire thing. And so that creates a potential, problem area. So I think those are the things that one needs to really talk about. And I'm gonna let the others talk, but just one interesting point here. Surprisingly, while not everyone can spend the 4,500 rupees on a COVID testing. That's what the government is saying. It's clearly ridiculous. There are screenings that are possible, and our healthy workplace certification is surprisingly cheap. But more importantly, the cost of a CBC, that's a complete blood count, that's an indirect marker in case your white blood cells spike, is cheaper than the cost of a mask that you might be actually administering to your staff out there. But a lot of people just don't know because they think it's too complicated. And of course, healthcare is a boring topic, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about some more of those things once the other gentlemen have got a chance.
Sure. Also, it's important to differentiate between the health of the staff and the food measures and the safety measures that have always been taken by and large by all restaurants or all establishments so far. So it is not right, or I think it would be unfair for even consumers and diners to now start believing that now food safety is being thought about. No, it was always a part of the everyday routine at your kitchens, your restaurants. So can we talk a little, maybe Mr. Khattar, you can start on some of the measures that have always been taken as far as the food safety is concerned, which is not what carries COVID. It's human to human. It's the human being which may be the carrier, not the food.
Right. See, as a brand that is about 65, 70 odd years old, I mean, as a brand extremely focused on hygiene, but as Chris mentioned, essentially focused on hygiene of the food, of the products, and of the spaces. We typically have a 120-point checklist for which our stores are all our products and our spaces are audited every month, every single store, every single month. Irrespective of whether they are located. And we have about 700 odd stores across the country, across the entire spectrum of the country. And we audit them each and every month on each of those parameters. And everybody who is, below a certain rank then gets pushed out, gets penalized, and action is taken both in terms of corrective action as well as in terms of training action, which gets initiated, once somebody is found to be wanting in any of the critical aspects. If there are aspects which are considered as imminent health risks, we shut down the store immediately and do not open unless that imminent health risk that has been identified is corrected in the moment. Either it's corrected in the moment or it's corrected after maybe 3 or 4 days. Only after that the store is re-audited, and then you figure that everything is fine, and then you reopen the store again. And there are people who are doing very well, let's say stores that are doing very well on each of these parameters and score above a certain rank. They are rewarded every month. So there is both a carrot and a stick approach in place to ensure that our stores maintain a basic minimum standard. As I said, the focus has entirely been on uh, the space hygiene, the product hygiene, the equipment hygiene, etc., and practices that we want our staff to, ensure. So, for instance, sanitizing of hands. It's not something that we've initiated right now. It's something that's always been there across our parlor, and across the entire chain in that sense. Similarly, however, there are some differences. For instance, we've never encouraged our staff to wear gloves because they are encouraged to actually wash hands before every transaction. That's been the practice so far. Now, of course, that's going to change because suddenly the customer concerns in this regard have reached a completely different level. I remember, in fact, that when the first COVID cases started in Kerala, way back in February, when the first batch of people had come back from Wuhan, and I think there were 2 or 3 cases in Kerala. We debated internally whether we should introduce masks for our staff, and it was voted down because everybody said that no, masks would give people a sense that there's something wrong with the staff that is serving, and we shouldn't do it. And today, of course, the whole paradigm has changed over the last 2 months. Everybody thinks differently, And now, of course, we are geared to move in a very, very different direction, both in terms of personal hygiene as well as we have relooked and reiterated each of the practices that we were following prior to, let's say, in the BC era, as Chris put it, and are now planning to completely redo those practices concerning the individuals, and the processes that they are supposed to follow. They have been relooked at. Some of them have been reiterated. I wouldn't say that 100% of them, because we thought that we have a complete set of guidelines. We of course introduced a lot many newer guidelines when it comes to interacting with third parties and stuff like that. So, for example, how do you interact with an aggregator? How do you interact with a customer if he was to walk in into your store, etc.? Those are, of course, newer practices, but
Yeah.
maybe 95% of our practices remain what they were in the BC era.
Vikrant, would you like to add?
See, what Chris said and what Mohit said is absolutely right. I don't want to emphasize on what we do as a brand. What I want to say is that everybody in the food industry and the brands are made brands because they follow a 360-degree process. Let it be the food quality, let
Very
it be
true.
their staff training, let it be their hygiene. All of us who are sitting in this room and doing this conference definitely will become brands because we're following all of this.
True.
And how do you win the confidence of the consumer is this is how you win. This is how you become a brand because the consumer trusts you. Now the new norms will come in, definitely. I'll give you a very small example. Yesterday was the first day when I stepped out of my house. Went to a grocery store, would not like to name it. And I came back home worried. As per that store, they were following the best they could. But I still felt, did I touch the credit card machine was right? I used the sanitizer of the store 5 times. I just got worried, you know, and that is when I realized that how do we need to train first ourselves as consumers, then first all the consumers who are coming in our restaurants also, how government will support us to educate people at large. Right now, everything is in dark. What can contaminate you? What can get you COVID? There are people without symptoms getting coronavirus. There are people having symptoms. So there's lots of things in dark. It is just about there has been a lot of social distancing, and then also there have been cases. So it created a lot of doubt in my mind that what is the right process. The best we can do is, and what Mohit said that, I mean, we've been using sanitizers as my brand the day we opened because we had live kitchens from the first outlet. That's a basic fundamental of designing a restaurant. We have a live kitchen. And we make sure that the boys on the front, on the assembly, who are making the sandwiches and salads, who are touching the ingredients, wear gloves always. And, these norms we've been following. But are these norms enough? There will be definitely a change when the consumer confidence will come back, then they will come to us. Before that, how do we tell them that we are ready for what you want? There will be a lots and lots of support coming for the government so that people like Chris and his company can help us follow them. That's very important. We would not be able to handle Inspector Raj in that because once you open your restaurant, the government and your landlord has to help you to comply those things, whether it takes 10 days or 20 days to comply what government wants us to do. We cannot just by ourselves decide and spend lakhs of rupees and making it, and the government said, no, this is not what we wanted. These are the clear norms we want from you, and then we have to comply them and then start. The journey will be tough, and it is a collective effort where all we as a fraternity must follow a principle of what we have to do, and government telling the consumer that how we have complied and how the confidence comes to the consumer which starts coming to our restaurants, and training of both the consumers and training of our in-house staff and everybody.
Right. In fact, a lot of restaurants around the world in other cities have started reopening, or at least they have the permission to reopen. Some are still choosing to sit out. I know in Italy, at least a lot of restaurants are getting some economic relief also. So, to enable them to retain staff, because eventually salaries need to go out, right? Um, it's a little off topic, but if there were 2 or 3 things that you think would or should be a part of, um, the supports that the government can give to restaurateurs or the industry as such, because it is one of the largest employers of people. What would you reckon, Sagar? Do you want to start with
Yeah, yeah.
a few there?
I'm always ready for it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so basically, definitely first things first, we require the unemployment pay cover to be taken care of. Because the post lockdown era, I'm not even saying the post COVID era, the post lockdown era is going to see a lot of bloodbath. A lot of your favorite restaurants are not going to open again. Many of them have already sent their employees on leave without pay. So the situation at the ground level is really, really bad. I mean, it's already led to a lot of unemployment, and people actually don't have, the restaurateurs don't have the money to pay salaries, and you can't help it, because not everyone is a funded company, not everyone has cash reserves. And to be very honest, our industry has been quite badly affected for the last 1.5 years, with the entire GST input being taken away from us. I think our losses, I mean, many of them, the profitability for those who are profitable have come down, and for those who are making losses, the cost of operations have gone up. So it's not been the best of 1.5 years. We've not had the best of winters, and then you come to this entire COVID era, and imagine we have some 2,500 million daily wage earners. These are the guys who are your dishwashers, your housekeeping guys, your stewards, working in restaurants, working in the hospitality sector. And we've actually, to an extent, gone ahead and risked their life for lakhs of people who might get affected by this virus. I mean, I am someone who's very different. I'm of the view that social distancing is not good for the economy, and this is like a epidemic on the economy. And beyond a point, we have to move on. The youth of the country, the young, the ones who are not vulnerable, have to come forward and get the economy going. Obviously, by maintaining standards, by ensuring that we take care of health, hygiene. I mean, our industry is known for health, hygiene, and happiness, right? Some way or the other, the happiness part of the industry is gone. I mean, the government has to come forward and ensure that we keep smiling and moving ahead, and that can only happen if we get this unemployment pay cover. So I'll tell you what, we contribute a very large amount of funds to the ESI, to the PF, and a lot of them has been underutilized, or is lying in the government corpus. Now those funds have to be utilized, and the government has to make a provision of 50% to 70% of the salaries who are for employees who are registered, and these are legally registered employees under the ESI scheme. You have to come forward, and you have to create a mechanism to safeguard the fraternity, to safeguard the industry. I mean, travel, tourism, hospitality, restaurants have been the worst affected, right? I mean, it's very good to follow the West, burn candles, clap, make a noise. But the West has also gone ahead and given economic packages to businesses, given them the oxygen, given that that sense of feeling secure and protected, and that has to happen in our country also. I mean, I'm a big fan of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but for me, if he keeps quiet and does not come forward and does not come and really take action, then he's not a PMO for me. He's a CMO for me. I become like a chief marketing officer who's just running a populist government. So I think apart from that, the next thing that we need to really work out is, after the employees, the next biggest cost that we have is the rental cost. I mean, today we operate 345 locations across cities. It's going to be a firefighting with every landlord, and your business model is not going to remain the same. Now, today, if our business model changes, the business model of landlords have to change. The business model of food aggregators have to change. I mean, imagine, just giving you an example, a store doing a 10 lakh revenue for me with a 2 lakh rental was making sense. Now that same store might start doing a 7 lakh revenue, and with that 2 lakh rental, it might not make sense for me. I might have to shut stores, or I might have to renegotiate my rentals. So renegotiation, altering your business model, obviously is, we have to first open up and understand what the mess is, and then we have to do the housekeeping to clear the mess in terms of business economics. But prior to that, I mean, there are malls, there are landlords who are not agreeing on giving you rental waivers during the lockdown. For them, it's very easy to raise an invoice and give it to us. Now we cannot raise an invoice and give it to my customer and say that you have to buy a Womo. Otherwise, how will I pay my rental to my landlord? So I think the malls have been quite adamant, although they have said they will be considerate, but they have all raised invoices for the month of April, for the month of May. I think the government has to be more transparent now. I believe the real estate sector has asked for force majeure when it comes to RERA. Now, when that same real estate has asked for force majeure when it comes to RERA, then the force majeure has to be clearly defined and outlined and clearly stated by the government that this is a case of force majeure, so that it avoids a lot of litigation that's going to happen in going forward, and B, it's going to give clarity, and there will be no ambiguity going forward. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of firefighting between the developer and the retailer. But we have to understand that, or the landlord, but we have to understand it is not the developer versus the landlord. There are four parties to this. It is the developer, the landlord, the government, and the banks. If the banks don't give, loan waivers or, moratoriums to these landlords or developers, they are also accountable to pay interest against the loan that they have taken and the principal that they have taken. In the same case, even when we are running businesses, even we take debt, we also have our interest to pay. We also have to take care of the principal amount, the interest amount. We also require our moratorium. So it's in a way the retailers or the fraternity, the F&B fraternity is going to get sandwiched between your payouts to the bank and to the landlords, because they are more highly established developers, and that's why you see the entire fraternity coming together. It's an industry call that we've taken, that we do require waivers when it comes to lockdown, but the government has to come forward and ensure that force majeure is announced. And lastly, I think a lot of tax holidays have to come in. A lot of deferment of utility payments have to come in, because everyone is weak on cash flows. And when you're weak on cash flows, the first thing that you want to do is you want to first pay out your employees, ensure that their livelihood is taken care of. There are no job cuts. I mean pay cuts is secondary, but there are no job cuts firstly. And secondly, in order to maintain that, you have to live today to survive tomorrow. And everyone's cash flow is taking a beating because there's no sales happening. I mean, imagine if you have a working capital loan with zero revenue, your working capital becomes nil. I mean, 1 month revenue gone and your working capital becomes nil, right? And then you have your outstanding to pay to your vendors, because that's more cyclic. It happens with the cash flow that happens on a monthly basis, and suddenly that entire cycle stops, right? So the government has to come forward, provide you with tax holidays, with whether it's in terms of GST, whether it's in terms of provident fund, ESI payments, or whether it's in terms of utility payments, be it your electricity, be it your gas, connections, your water connections. So I think the government has to be more bold. And lastly, I think the government needs to not really care about fiscal deficit. The government needs to not really care about how strong the rupee is going to be against the dollar. I think we need to print more notes. We need to, we need to get debt from foreign countries at a cheaper rate, and enhance that debt credit facility to entrepreneurs at a cheaper rate. Ensure that the entrepreneurs are self-sufficient, and we are a machinery that is continuing to go forward, and the business goes on, because the economy has to go on, the show has to go on. The fiscal deficit will come back to normalcy. This is the time when the oil prices are the lowest. This is the time when it's the right time to actually ensure that you take some debt in, get it into the country. Don't worry about fiscal deficit. Don't worry about the inflation, but ensure that cash is there in the system, because cash is the king in the current scenario. I mean, every business is trying to conserve cash. I mean, the mantra right now is to reduce your losses. Losses is mandatory to happen. The business that can reduce its losses and contain its losses to the least are the ones that are going to hold fort and survive to battle it out tomorrow. I mean, like Jack Ma said, this entire year is about being alive. It's not about your dreams. I think last financial year we opened 101 outlets, 10 outlets every month, literally. And in the last month, which was the month of March, we just opened one store, and we were completely stuck with 12 stores completely ready on a plug and play model to be opened, but we had to just stop. So imagine now it's no more going to be about expansion. It's going to be about consolidation. It's going to be about understanding your business model. It's going to be about reinventing the meal, reinventing the business model. There are so many stores that might shut down. There may be store closures. Landlords will not agree. There'll be firefighting, infighting within us, and it will be a collective thing and an individual battle, both, because the fraternity is going to be on one stance, and the developers and the landlords are going to be on the other stance. So you might call it cartelization or whatever you want to call it, but that's the reality, and that is where we are, and the government has to chip in and clear these doubts, these ambiguities.
Rahul, Kabir, would you like to add to any of those lots of points that Sagar made?
So yeah, Sagar has actually went out with all of the frustration the entire industry has. So he has literally left nothing for us to say. But I would just press on a few points which would add benefit to the entire fraternity, which is like when Sagar talked about tax holidays. Our industry is the most affected one, because we are the ones we do not even get input credit on GST. So, there was some discussion which FHRI also took long back, but apparently it benefited the FHRI to the hotel segment, but it didn't translate it to restaurants at all. And we are the most affected there as well. So, apart from having tax holidays, there have been some nuances in terms of us being affected more on the GST part as well. Uh, assuming that we are earning the most, but it's reverse because we deliver. We are into that live competition that we deliver food at lot of threshold prices with minimum margins. The objective is always to have more and more customer, more and more experience happening at restaurants. So, that is where I would like to press. Also, the biggest hit which comes as Sagar began with is the labor cost, followed by utilities as well and rentals. In utilities, now government can easily waive off some minimum and fixed charges. So these are few things which government has ease hands on. They can waive off fixed charges. Right now our restaurants are shut, everybody is worried, everybody would be getting fixed charges, bills, getting imposed on them, they have to pay one day or the other. And this is something which is a cost which is unused, which is not actually to be boarded on us. So there are costs like us, like these also, which are getting boarded on us. Then developers actually have to partner us rather than standing up opposing us. They should partner us when they are talking about their under construction property to fall under force majeure. They should also talk about their operational properties to get into force majeure, as Sagar rightly said, because that will help them also win the battle and us also. And it's happening vis-a-vis. I've been part of few of their conversation where they're just saying that, listen, if you're going to go the other route, better be out or we'll see you in court. So that should not be the objective. The objective should be, see, we as a retailer, if we earn, we are able to give them back. And the property is utilized to operate a restaurant, give some part of it. It cannot be vice versa. There I am paying a rent of, for example, 10 or 7 or 8 or lakh rupees and making half of the money. And, literally not even now. So there are properties which have been actually, which is very true. There are many developers which charge you so high rents where you barely make margins, but you do it because you want to be present for consumers, and that is very true for our industry. But still, we are operating it, and those developers, if they are not going to be reasonable now, I am sorry to say, this industry is going to be completely backing out from them, and there will be no restaurants operational there. Nobody can pay from his own pocket for something which he's not even using it. As Sagar rightly said, I can't even force a consumer to say मेरा अभी मोमो खा लो पैसा दे दो क्योंकि मुझे डेवलपर को पैसा देना है. You
That's
can't do all of that.
very high. Rentals in
Yeah.
India are very high. In one
Yeah.
of the conversations, Ritu Dalmia was mentioning that her restaurant in Milan, which is right in the center of the most posh locality and extremely good area, is cheaper than what she pays, in a GK2 in New Delhi.
Ma'am, it's very strange. Here, in fact, there are a lot of quotes which I have seen Sagar saying that getting restaurant licenses are also even complicated. It's even rather being complicated, easier to buy a ammunition
A
or
pistol.
a gun.
To buy a pistol is more easier than opening up a
So
restaurant.
there are articles like that. So it's so complicated, and in fact, at this era, which I remember, Delhi government they have just introduced something called a single clearance window, which was asked by our industry long time back, and apparently they have involved small to big restaurant setups opting for all necessary license, which was actually required for a bigger infrastructure. For kiosk also they are going and asking for environmental clearance, etc., which actually gives a cost on somebody who's doing a small kiosk setup, who will not even make lakh rupee of a month, has to pay lakh rupee as a fees. So, they are enhancing complexity rather than easing our job.
Okay. Kabir, you have a couple of economic points before we go back to our main topic of food hygiene. And I'm sorry to bring you in this late. It's very passionate subject with all of us. So you're on mute, Kabir. You're on mute. Uh, There's that little mic icon, should be on your screen if you can
And
undo.
Kabir, if you try
Yeah,
and go
sorry,
this call, yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, it's on.
sorry about that. Well, there are about 5 stages of acceptance, um, and we all have to go through it: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. I think Sagar is on anger, and I'm on depression. Uh, we are gradually making our way towards acceptance. So I've crossed bargaining, and I'm fairly confident that there is no rescue package coming for us. We are the stepchild of this government. First, they take away the GST import. Now, the whole force majeure situation. I don't think there's a rescue coming, and what I think is that we'll have to kind of do this on our own. Um, some people are going to lose jobs. Things are going to contract a little bit. We'll have to repivot. We'll have to make our businesses COVID friendly. Hygiene has to play a very large role with it. I feel this is now not just about the product, it is also about the trust in the brand. Like somebody said that, we've all got strong brands, and why would one person order from here and not from here? And the guy who's being able to communicate his hygiene standards as number one and doesn't slip up is the guy who's going to be able to make that transition. Um, I have a question for Chris, though, if that's all right.
Yes, please go ahead.
Chris, you said that you have some sort of a test that can also give you a certification on the COVID base. How does that work? What kind of test were you referring to?
Sure. So the Healthy Workplace Certificate consists of 3 elements for the food services bit at least. The first is COVID screening. So that consists of a doctor consultation where the doctor, minimum MBBS qualified, etc., as required by law, does a symptom assessment test. Now, this is part medicine and part legality. The intent on the legal side is to provide some sort of a plausible deniability in the event some employee was found with some symptoms later. At least, the employer can say, look, here is an independent verification done by a practitioner where I can prove that that person lied and I did not know that such a thing was there. But hopefully employees don't do that. But the intent is to have a symptom assessment test done by the medical practitioner, talking about trace history, contact genesis, and so on and so forth. And on the basis of that, the doctor provides a symptom clearance certificate, which is valid for just 2 weeks because that's the time that the virus takes to mutate. So that's the first part. The second, we couple that with a physical health test that is done either at the place of work. So we organize camps, once the lockdown is done, of course, at the particular store, the restaurant or café need a minimum 100 square feet of space, where our phlebotomists and the lab guys come in, and we do a blood draw. We start with a lung function test. We look at anomalies in the lung. We look at any kind of infection in the lung, which is, as we know, it affects the respiratory system. So we try and see if there are any markers there. And we check for the other stuff like chronic bronchitis and asbestos and so on and so forth, etc., in the lungs. The second is we look at blood draw. So we look at inflammation or anomalies in the blood. So for example, if the white blood cells have spiked, then the body is fighting an infection. So if that means there is some sort of an infection, try to assess that the infection is not related to bad nutrition or just a bone marrow deficiency or something of that sort. Then we send them back to the doctor to get that tested. So this is another indirect marker. But we also do the other checks, the standard checks, since we are anyway drawing the blood. Then we look at a liver function test, kidney function test. We do a heart risk assessment, and we do a skin test to check for any communicable diseases and cuts and so on and so forth. Lastly, the third piece is we do vaccination for hepatitis B and for typhoid. Now, the collection of all of this, the COVID screening test certificate is valid for 2 weeks. So theoretically, you must repeat it every 2 weeks just to make sure. But what we are advising our clients is don't repeat it every 2 weeks. What you can do is do the first in-person test or on the phone teleconsultation, and then have a recording of the temperature. And we have a web app where the employee or their shift supervisor or whatever takes the temperature on a daily basis and logs it in the morning and evening on the system. So again, it maintains a log for a period of 30 days or 90 days, depending on what you signed up for. And in case you see an anomaly there, then send them back to the doctor. So you're not sending everybody back. The physical test certificate gives you a medically fit, unfit certificate from a registered doctor, as well as the lab, the NABL and ICMR certified lab, which is valid for a period of 6 months. So same thing with the vaccination. And assuming that employee has stayed with you for a period of 6 months, then what you need to do is just give a booster shot for the vaccinations, as opposed to immediately starting off. So that's the combination. I can tell you how it's working in practice and some interesting things around what Sagar mentioned. I'd like to connect that back, but I'd let Kabir react and then kind of jump to that.
Just a quick one. The blood draw, that also happens every 2 weeks?
No, the blood draw happens once every 6 months, or earlier if desired. So what we're doing is, there is the COVID screening certificate, which is supported by a registered doctor. In the event someone is found to have symptoms, then you need that doctor, MBBS qualification, registered, all of that kind of stuff, to provide a prescription, which is a prerequisite to undergo a test. If that prescription is not there, then you don't. And then you fill in the Form 44 and all of that kind of stuff that we all know of to undergo that particular test. Now, here's the thing, an interesting thing, and connecting it back to what Sagar mentioned earlier, the point about ESIC. It's interesting you mentioned that, right? Every employer is contributing in the 3.25% to any employee who's registered ESIC employee less than 21,000 rupees in salary. The employee contributes about 0.75. Did you guys know that the ESIC has got about 1,400 dispensaries across the country? They've got over 1,600 doctors that are supposed to be for this particular case, and over 145 hospitals. And ESIC is supposed to cover everything from medical benefit, sickness benefit, maternity benefit, disablement benefit, dependents benefit, funeral expenses, and rehabilitation allowance. Now, as an industry, I would say that's the question you should be asking the government and the Karta Dhartas, that what's happening to all that money that we contributed? Isn't ESIC supposed to take care of that? Now, I'll connect that to an incident that just happened yesterday at one of the very well-known, one of the top 50 restaurants in the country, which happens to be a client. So they're planning to start deliveries in Bombay. And they said, look, before we start, I want to make sure that the testing process is completed. So at least I can go out there and say we are Healthy Workplace certified, make sure that all our bags, delivery bags, have got that sticker, etc. So we completed the telephonic symptom assessment test. Two of the guys complained of fever, but no other symptoms really. So, they said we went to the local doctor. Doctor ne kaha viral fever hai, so they've given us some antibiotics and paracetamol. So we said, let's send all of them to our partner lab. They all went in different instances. Now, turns out one of the guys actually was shy, afraid, a combination of the two things, and didn't talk about the fact that thode gale mein bhi kharash ho rahi hai, right? Very normal. Obviously, the poor guy is all freaked out and wondering what the hell is going to happen and stuff like that. Now, the moment the owner came to know, the owner said, you know what, I don't want to risk it. Can we just get a test done for this guy? So we said, okay, let's take care of that. So we got the prescription done. And as was the process until midnight last night, the doctor could prescribe, and we would send them to one of the private labs, which is in our network, which in Mumbai is Suburban Diagnostics. And he was scheduled for an appointment for 10 a.m. today morning. Now, as you can imagine, between yesterday morning when he got tested and, the thing was showing some sort of readings were off, to today morning, the guy basically didn't sleep. And neither did his family, and he's living in a chawl and all of that kind of stuff. Craziness is happening. He's calling us 1,000 times, etc. Koi jana chahiye, koi kisi ko leke jaun, kya hoga wahan pe kind of situation. But we said, don't worry, it's at Suburban Diagnostics. And because they work with us and they know you're our client and all of that, somebody will take care of it. Last night, there were some center, medical guys, the National Health Council guys came down to Bombay, spoke to the BMC, the Bombay Municipal Corporation, They changed the law that the prescription now has to be only from the ward medical officer. Now, where does one find a ward medical officer, right? So we used our relationships with the BMC and got the contact, and we said this happens to be in Bandra. I want to know the DSO's number. So we got the 2 DSO contacts. So they said DSO आपको help करेगा, आपको उनसे prescription लेना है. So we said चलो ठीक है, we'll call up those DSOs. But what happens after the prescription is done? After the prescription is done, you have to go to a BMC hospital only. So we said, so private is out. Yes, private is out. So that means you have to go to Kasturba or Cooper Hospital or KEM or all that. Yes. So the guy already know. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, guys, I have to leave. Really, excuse me.
Oh,
thank you, guys. I have a call at 5 o'clock. Be strong, be safe, guys. Take care. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I won't take up much time. I think it's important to just talk about this so that you understand the process for your own employees in case it comes up. So after that, the municipal hospital is going to take a blood test, and until the test report comes, which is a maximum of 3 days, that poor guy has to be quarantined there in that municipal hospital. What's the result? The employee is not going to come out there and say that he's got a symptom. If he's going to make sure he pops crocin 3 times a day, and he's not going to, kind of talk about. So, but this is the part that ESIC is supposed to take care of. This is the part where, as an industry with the human capital, we need to come together and say that, okay, what are the laws? What are the guidelines? If you intend for us to get back. I'm going to pause there and throw the mic back to you.
Yeah. No, that's all. Actually, that's exactly what's happening at the ground level. So, but it's 5 now, and Vikrant had to leave us. So I guess I just want to spend the next little bit of time understanding from you all. We know that getting the consumers back and the diners back is going to be very, very important, and for them to feel absolutely confident to place that next order will depend largely on how we communicate to them the measures that we've taken. So there are lots of these things doing the rounds. People are talking about, just like in the airline industry, they're saying that the middle seat will be left vacant so that there's social distancing inside an aircraft. How logical that is, only time will tell. But in restaurants also, at least in the US or Georgia, where they've started opening restaurants now, they're saying you can't go more than 25% capacity. So are these measures that you think will work to at least keep the consumer satisfied, assured, beyond the certificate, beyond physical measures?
So you know what? I'll take this up. Hashtag social distancing, hashtag contactless is the new now. But very honestly, going forward, if you all remember, when we had the terror attacks 26/11 in Mumbai, outside every mall you would see people standing with metal detectors and doing a surveillance screening, right? You're going to now see a lot of surveillance happening around health. Before you enter a restaurant, your temperature is going to be monitored when you come in as a consumer, right? There's going to be a lot of social distancing happening within restaurants. Maybe an 80-cover restaurant will become a 40-cover restaurant. You'll see social distancing happening in the kitchen. 15-member kitchen would come down to maybe a 7 or 8-member kitchen. So that will be limitation of menu, right? So you'll see the menu being more compact for some time to come. You will see, the turnaround time, maybe restaurants trying to make the turnaround time more faster, trying to, like I read the other day, I think somewhere in Europe, a McDonald's restaurant, serves you burgers and French fries in a trolley, so that there's no contact happening between the server and the consumer. So you'll see a lot of social distancing definitely having. You'll see contactless payments happening. People would not want to use the credit card machines. Pay online. The menu card is a very physical thing in stores, in restaurants. So the menu card will be avoided. You come and see the menu on your phone, etc., etc. See, all that is there to happen. To what extent will it happen will only be determined as to how soon the vaccine comes in. The vaccine for this virus, or the paracetamol for this virus, has to come in ASAP, right? To get that fear and the fear psychosis out of people's minds.
Right. The vaccine is coming much later. So I'll give you an example. I was looking at Zomato yesterday, and I was looking at the restaurants around me that are ordering. I'm in Gurgaon at the moment. So lots of restaurants that I regularly order from, and they are good hygienic places so far. they are delivering. But when I looked at this one little line at the bottom which says, um, the delivery boy will wash his hands, and he will wear a mask, it did not inspire confidence for me to be able to place that order, though I know that I have nothing to worry about as far as the food is concerned. So how the things that you think we can do, communicate, but how, and communicate what to that consumer to start. Eventually, totally agree with you, Sagar, it will become like a blind spot, like all the cute little Labrador, those dogs outside hotels that check the cars. There will be masks and there will be sanitizers in all restaurants. We'll begin to live with it, but to start it off, how do we get the consumers to
Yeah,
start
we Indians believe a lot in what we see. Jo dikhta hai wo bikhta hai. That's always been the case. Now the thing is that a lot of people talk about delivery being the next new now. I have a different take here. I think pre-order and takeaway. So we would go to the app and we would deliver, order and get the food home. I think pre-order and takeaway would be the next big thing. Because the person would want to come to your restaurant, pick up the food himself, and see the hygiene measures, and also trust himself more than a delivery guy coming home and delivering food and risking the entire family. No matter how much you talk about contactless or whatever you do, right? You will also see a lot of restaurants who are serving in their kitchens being live streamed. Right now, you obviously cannot.
that's another time.
Yeah, kitchens being live streamed. So I think it's going to be a lot of visual confidence that you'll have to bring in the minds of the people, and that's how the fear psychosis is going to go. But I think to begin with, more than I mean, we all when the lockdown started, we had Vamo were not even shut for a single day. As the lockdown picked up, I think the delivery sales really went up, and then you hear about one case in Delhi of a pizza delivery guy getting the
Mm.
virus, and the entire delivery sales crashing. Until now, we haven't recovered, right? So, we have to understand one thing, that there are millions and millions of these delivery riders, aggregators, as well as our employees who are actually risking their lives and going out there and working to be able to provide you that food, which is an essential service. There are a lot of people who actually depend on outside food, who cannot cook food at home. Many people who are bachelors, who live in paying guests, don't know how to cook. So how will you survive, right? So I think see, when there are millions and millions of delivery orders happening, there will be a few cases of people getting affected with the virus, because they're also humans, right? They're ultimately going and risking their lives. I think we have to be more use the common sense more and be more sensitive towards the entire fraternity and people who are actually going there and doing that, whether they are providing you essential services or whether they're providing you food. We
Right.
I think the media blew it out of proportion. Until now, we are succumbing to it. I mean, the delivery business has come down to half, and that's why I say, the fear psychosis is built within people. I mean, I'll give you one small example. I had to send some food to a few of my cousins in Bandra, and we have a store in Carter Road in Bandra. And in the same building, I had two families living. Both loved the product. One of the family wanted to have the food, were super excited. The other family was like, "We are not getting outside food." I mean, the kids wanted it, but the mom was like, "No, I'm not allowing the kids to have outside food." So imagine being my own relatives. Look at the
Yeah.
consumer psychic. In the same building, two families, one family saying a no and one family saying a yes. So that's the fear psychosis that we all will have to battle, and we'll have to create that confidence, which is going to be time consuming. Business is
Yeah.
going to be really sluggish till September, October. I don't see it getting back to close to normal before December, before when we have a late Diwali and then we have the Christmas season coming in. So the next 6 months are going to be really, really hectic. 6 to 7 months are going to be really hectic for us. I think it's going to be a battle for us to build in that confidence, and it's going to take a while before we see normalcy coming in, to be honest.
Mr. Khattar?
Sagar, I quick.
Abhi, sorry, you
No,
had
I
one
kind
more.
of echo.
So
I kind of echo what Sagar just said. I don't think that consumers are going to change purely because Zomato or restaurants are going to communicate that, oh, my staff is pretty good and my processes are pretty good. There is going to be that element of disbelief that is going to be there. We all know what's the kind of segment that most of these most of the staff members really come from. They don't necessarily come from pockets of affluence. They come from pockets of relative impoverishment. So it is going to be tough to communicate. And I don't think any one single restaurant can communicate this enough that, oh, my processes are all very good. It will have to happen over a period of time, over a period of 5 to 6 months. And I definitely feel that, healthcare agencies like the one that Chris is talking about, their certification or third party certification could play an important role. As long
Yeah.
as the agency is perceived to be credible, and known to the consumer. If it's an unknown agency, or an agency that the consumer does not associate with, their certification may not have the desired value. And that's where possibly, if the entire agency kind of builds up, let's say Chris's agency, and says this is the go-to agency for certifying staff, and possibly it is backed up by a few hospitals, etc., etc., more credible names, and those are then used to certify each of the restaurant members, that could possibly go a longer way in building up some consumer confidence.
Yeah. And then it's a habit thing once you
Yeah.
start. Yeah.
But having said this, I'll also tell you that a couple of our outlets are currently open and essentially doing business through delivery. Fortunately, business has been very, very strong. So
Yeah.
even if, let's say, only 20% of my outlets are open, but the amount of business that each of those outlets is doing is staggering. So I don't think that all customers are as concerned. Yes, there is a fair number of customers that may be concerned about bringing outside food home, but I'm also equally confident that once the lockdown ends and the stores open up, demand is going to be pretty strong. At least that's what I'm seeing in a category which is very tough. If you recall, around February, March, there was all this news about don't consume cold products and don't consume ice creams because it
Yeah.
spreads the virus. But having said this, demand is pretty strong, so I'm pretty confident that
Great.
things will look up.
Great. That's good to know. Kabir, you wanted to make a point.
Sagar, I had a question for you. On the mall food courts, you've got a significant number of outlets over there. How do you see that panning out here? Do you see that being more delivery focused, or people are going to walk in there for takeaway as well?
So I think with malls, it's more of impulse buy that always happens. We're there in more than 100 malls. I think malls is more of a place where you come and, it's more of a destination where you come and shop, you watch a movie, you spend the day, or you come to, literally shop and you grab a quick meal. I'll tell you how the malls, I see them getting affected. I think it's going to be very, very sluggish for time to come, because who are the guys who come to malls? The guys who have the money to buy your products, they come in, they will not risk their life. They will want to go online and order it, right? The other guys who come to the mall are the guys who come to spend the entire day, who are the middle class, the upper middle class. There are going to be a lot of job cuts, a lot of pay cuts. They will not have that extra money that discretionary spend is going to take shape, right? So you're going to see a lot of impact coming into malls. And lastly, people will want to avoid crowded places. Malls are places where there's a lot of crowd. You don't know who's carrying the virus where, right? So I think no matter how much confidence we try and pull in that the mall has sanitizers, the mall is trying to do X, Y, Z, but that fear psychosis is going to be there in people's minds, and malls and multiplexes are not the best places for business for the next 6 months for sure. I think as a fraternity we'll have to build in that confidence, and we actually will have to keep our fingers crossed and hope that the vaccine comes in sooner than later, because I think I see that to be the only solution. Or the other mindset is that people accept the virus in their lifestyle and go ahead and live with it, but that's not happening. That's definitely happening to save the economy, but that's not happening when it comes to luxury, leisure, or pleasure, right? And malls is all about luxury, leisure, or pleasure. So it's going to be tough out there. It's going to be very, very tough out there, and that is why we as a fraternity have reached out to the malls. We're negotiating for the next 9 to 12 months, where we want to go on a pure rev share with the malls, because the business is really going to get very badly affected. The entire business model is going to change for us. And honestly, malls are not the best place they're not the most delivery friendly locations. I
Friendly
mean, a
location.
delivery rider coming in has to park his bike in the basement, come to the fifth floor, or if you have to go and give it down to him, you have to travel all the way. So malls have never been very
Yeah.
delivery friendly or delivery focused, right? So we are also now trying to do one panel with REI where we're getting the food. We're getting the food restaurateurs, and we're also getting one aggregator, maybe the founder or the CEO of Swiggy, to come and talk, because it's about with the developer, with the brand, and with the aggregator, how do we make malls more delivery friendly? Because delivery is again going to be the next new now, apart from takeaway, and the dine-in is really going to come down, right? You will also see a lot of social distancing
Yeah.
happening within food courts. A large 1,000-seater food court would become a 500-seater food court. You'll see a lot of distancing happening there. But will the rentals come down? Will the cam charges come down? Because your cost of maintaining that would remain the same, right? Your aircon would remain the same. So yeah, a lot of maths to be done, a lot of calculations to be done. I'm sure Rahul can also give some insights. I think Taco Bell also has many of the stores in malls,
Yeah.
and we actually are very excited looking forward for the opening up to happen. At the moment, we are also very anxious, because we don't know how it's going to shape up, and it's
Yeah.
going to take you 2-3 months to understand how it's going to shape up. And once you understand, you're going to be working on clearing the mess, which will take another 6 months, and to understand the model and how to tweak the model. So I think these adverse time calls for being diverse. It calls for being resilient. It calls for being, innovating new things. Like for example, with us in Wow Momo, we began a new thing called Wow Momo Essentials. We
Yeah,
started,
we
so
saw
we
that.
are currently delivering breads, eggs, milk,
Oh,
butter.
really?
We are
Wow.
delivering, yeah, we're delivering sanitary pads. We're delivering condoms. So we actually have a whole range of Amomo essentials. And why did we do this? Because today, if you go to a big basket or a Grofers, it takes you 2 days for you to get a time slot, and it's not really happening, right? But through a Swiggy Zomato, you get real time food delivery happening. Within 40-45 minutes, your food is delivered to your house. So we said, how can we utilize our stores which are open? So out of our 345 stores, only 60 stores are open for delivery. Now, how do we utilize these stores better? How do we get more revenue coming in? Because business has come down to 1/10 of what it was post-COVID. Pre-COVID. So 1/10 of your business, where you would end up doing a number, and it's come down to 1/10, but your salary cost is the same, right? You have, out of 2,700 employees, we only have 700 who are on the field. There are 2,000 employees whom we can't ask them to do anything because it's not their fault. They can't come to the store because the store is shut. So we said, let's
Yeah.
do this Wamomo Essentials, where we tied up with ITC, with HUL, with Imami, with Procter and Gamble, and it's going quite well, to be honest. In cities like Calcutta, Chennai, Bombay, where you don't have too many essential grocery players available online, it's doing phenomenally well. Our highest selling product, surprisingly, has been Pampers and diapers for kids, because no one has stocked them.
Yeah.
So, I think Wamomo Essential is again a new innovation that we did. So I think going forward, you will have to create these innovations. You will have to tweak your business model, and you will also fail. Not that you'll always succeed. Like for example, Wamomo Essential was a big success for us in Calcutta, in Chennai, in Bombay. It was a big failure in Bangalore, because Bangalore already had oversupply of online e-grocery players. Every kirana shop there does online delivery. So there are going to be successes, there are going to be failures. You have to learn from your failures and know how to bounce back as soon as possible without burning cash. Because cash burn is a mandatory norm now. You have to
Yeah.
conserve
Yeah.
as much as you can.
In fact, talking about cash, Rahul, budget for this, because you're going to be spending more. In any case, the cost hasn't gone down. The rentals, the camp charges, all of that remains the same. Employee salaries. You'll also have to now spend on better perceived hygiene and food safety and the masks and the sanitizers. How does one budget? Not to mention the marketing that you have to do.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think it's there now to be planned on board well. Because of social distancing, you can't use much of labor now, and that is to be used as an advantage. So reduce on workforce, work more towards sanitation, have lesser touch points. So all these aspects, while planning on the board before executing a store operations, will really have. Technology is going to play a bigger role here. You have to have, as Sagar had mentioned in his previous conversation, that you're going to get people little worried about ordering from menu boards or touching the screen and then ordering. You have to have the bar system. So there is a lot of technology in place. You QR code system where you can sit and order. You have to limit your customer movement within. So I think all this planning with in place will really help having effective labor cost. Then this sanitation cannot be taken for a ride. Bringing technology in can also reduce some bit of labor. And yes, we are now rest on mercy with aggregators, developers, and government to support. If they do not, sustainability of restaurants would be a big question mark. Aggregators has to support to bring down the cost, because now the larger number of the business is relying on them. They should bring on the cost down for the contribution which they take towards every delivery order. Government has to support on the ESIC or the employment stream, GST rebates. Developers has to support in, if we make money, we give the money to the extent where it gives us the survival of the business. If that doesn't happen, this is industry is going to face a lot of problems, and we'll be finding a lot of restaurants shutting down. Nobody is going to pay from his pocket and operate.
True, true. Gentlemen, we'll start with last comments, starting with you, Mr. Khattar. Wrapping up the whole scenario, looking forward, crystal balling a little bit. If you were sitting in May of 2021, what would you like to say of the last 12 months of the recovery and the survival and
Well, I'm a born optimist, so I would assume that the pandemic would have been completely over, done and dusted. The vaccine would have come out possibly in the month of August, and and things would be a lot clearer. Having said this, I mean, we all know that it's a bit of a I mean, it is rather optimistic at this point of time, but I don't think the industry has too many options at this point of time, but to conserve cash, to cut costs. And cutting costs would mean both in terms of renegotiation of rentals, which is a big component of costs, as well as manpower. Unfortunately, I don't think there is far too much option.
food
Hoping
hygiene wise?
hoping for the government to support, yes, that's a big ask. We don't know. I mean, we haven't seen the government being supportive of the industry, as I think one of the panelists did mention. I think Kabir mentioned that we are a stepchild of the government, and I think that's pretty correct. So I don't expect too much support coming in from the government. We would have to manage ourselves. So conserving cash definitely is the order of the day. I don't see anything very different. We only have to hope that the vaccine comes out as soon as possible, and if that does happen, then hopefully the next few months is going to be tough, but hopefully after that the business would pick up.
Great, great. Kabir, how will Burger Singh make sure people keep ordering your juicy burgers? Kabir's not here. Sagar?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Kabir's back. Let's finish. Yeah. Kabir, I was asking you about the next 12-month scenario.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Something keeps going wrong over here.
Can you hear me now?
Give me 1 second. Let me disconnect and come back.
Okay. Sagar, please take that question.
Yeah, so we also make juicy burgers. We have a product called Momo Burger, which sells a lot. So I'll take that from Kabir.
But I'm aware that there does exist such a thing.
Yeah, so the Mobug sells a lot.
Yeah.
And we have these combos where we give you two burgers at 79 and 89, and we call it bigger and better. So we compete with Burger King, and not Burger Singh. Burger Singh is one of my favorite brands. I love your mutton burgers, man. So basically, yeah, I think the focus is going to remain on health, hygiene, happiness, as has been the case. I think as a brand we have to be more proactive, and we have to be more outspoken about how we are safe for the consumer, and not by just putting it in words. I think by doing it through action in your stores, in your restaurants, whether it's your staff working in the stores, how well dressed he is, how neatly dressed he is, or whether how neatly the restaurant is kept. And these are the basics that we used to already do before. Like Mohit sir said, washing of hands, using sanitizers, keeping your restaurants clean. I think this was always the case in our industry, and at Wamomo, we all have all live kitchens. You can see everything that's happening. So I think transparency is going to come in more deep. But I personally am a very optimist person, and I feel that India is going to be one of the fastest countries to bounce back. Because 75 to 80% of our population still lives hand to mouth. Someone like me also has to go every day and work if I have to pay my home EMI, right? So all of us have got so many personal liabilities, personal finances, because our standard of living has gone up. We've got personal liabilities that has helped us to take up a standard of living, and we have our home EMIs to pay. We have other EMIs to pay, and I think 80% of the people have to go out there and work, unlike Europe and US, where 50% of the population can remain to sit at home for 6 months. So I think India is going to be one country that's going to bounce back the fastest. I think
They
we
can claim unemployment. I'm saying they can sit at home and claim unemployment, unlike all of us.
Yeah, unlike all of us, and at the same time, I'm sure given an option, even the same thing would have happened in India, but we don't have an option. So in a way, that's the only carrot I see in this entire stick that we've all been getting.
Last words from you.
I didn't get the question. Sorry.
We were just crystal balling, and we were saying that if you were sitting in May of 2021 or August of 2021, how would you like to sort of recap the last 12 months, the survival.
I'd like to cancel my subscription to 2020. I want my money back.
But that's not an option. So.
Well, like Sagar said, I think we had this innate capacity as a country to bounce back because we have no choice but to do so. Large population, I think, very young population. I think a lot of demographic factors are in our favor as far as this disease is concerned. I think the lockdown doesn't do anything. It's just a pause button that the government puts in place till they can figure out what's happening. And when you open the lockdown, you have to have a few checks in place, which is, am I being able to do contact tracing? Am I being able to test at large scale? Is the industry ready for social distancing measures and have they been put in place? And am I reporting honest numbers? I don't think we've met any of those criteria before we opened the country up. So I think that clearly the government is now come at ease with that India is going to have a phenomenal number of COVID patients. Some people will die, and life will go on. Yeah. I know I'm not being a ray of sunshine, but that's the truth. We've as a country adjusted to the facts that our numbers are going to be the highest numbers in the world. We're already tracking at getting to 75,000. Our population is so large that even if 10% of us get it, that's just a new world record. So we live with it.
Yeah. Chris, would you like to add something as I thank everyone?
I'm just going to say that prioritize employee health. It's my plug for my business, but also because that's actually what is required. It costs. I hate to sound like a salesman, but it costs just 1,000 rupees to get a healthy workplace certification done and the vaccinations, everything per employee. A lot of companies should do it. We've, having said that, have had very well-funded USR chain guys come up to us and say, "Yaar, 90 रुपए में क्या मिलेगा?" I said, 90 रुपए में तुम्हें medical certificate भी नहीं मिलेगा किसी MBBS doctor का. But so I think we need to change our mindset, and we have to, pay attention to the fact that we need to invest in employee health assets and convey that and build reassurance and trust. And I think that will automatically get conveyed through the employees to your customers as well. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely. And like Mr. Khattar said, if the consumer has that assurance that this certification is coming from a trusted, credible source, it will certainly encourage them. It would have encouraged me to place that order yesterday if I'd seen some more assurances coming. Anyway, so thank you so much, everyone. I guess reopening is the way forward, but let's hope we're doing it safely and health and safety to all of you and all your family. Thank you.
Thank you.